The world of cycling has never seen a phenomenon like Peter Sagan. At just 22 years of age, he exploded in popularity after winning 3 Tour de France stages on his debut. And in the space of just 5 years, he went from being a newcomer to one of the all-time greats of the sport.
Once in a number of generations, you see a rider like Peter Sagan, and it's such a pleasure to watch him.
This is how Peter Sagan pulled off the most unprecedented feat in cycling. As soon as the 2013 season had kicked off, the Peter Sagan show was on. He quickly became the center of attention thanks to his unconventional style, making everything look easy and fun while others struggled. He never ceased to surprise and always had something to offer. It didn't matter if it was a 30% climb, a fast descent, or a mass sprint. Peter always delivered. Following his early season success, everyone's money was on the young Slovak for the Spring Classics in March and April. These classics are some of the most prestigious bike races in cycling. Among them is the Tour of Flanders, which is Sagan's main target.
Peter Sagan, a wheelie over the line.
But the party was about to be interrupted. It was only a matter of time before he faced Fabian Cancellara, one of the best ever when it comes to the cobbled classics. Nicknamed Spartacus, this Swiss rider is a beast of time trialing and a veteran classics specialist. He knows these cobblestones like the back of his hand. After dominating the classics for years, he experienced some setbacks in 2012. But in 2013, he's back on form and is determined to regain his throne.
Fabian Cancellara wint voor de 3e keer de E3 Harelbeke. Een monument.
This performance by Cancellara got cycling fans hyped up and ready for a potential battle between the Swiss and the Slovak in the upcoming Tour of Flanders.
It's the 14th Sunday of the year, and in Flanders, that can only mean one thing. Bikes, racing, cobbles and hills.
17 sections of cobbled climbs is what makes the Flemish monument arguably the hardest one-day race in cycling, the Paterberg being the most important of them all. It's short, but often decides the whole race because of its steepness and proximity to the finish.
This is interesting here. Cancellara stepping up the gas now. Sagan right on his wheel.
With 18 kilometers remaining, Cancellara accelerates on the penultimate climb in an attempt to drop his opponents.
This is exactly where he rode away in the E3 Harelbeke a week ago.
His attack ripped the race into pieces, and nobody was able to keep up with his pace, except for Sagan.
Sagan right on his wheel, and he's not letting Cancellara out of his sight.
This move resulted in a front group of 3 riders after they caught up to the only man in the breakaway.
Fabian Cancellara, Peter Sagan and Jürgen Roelandts at the head of the race.
But when they hit the Paterberg, it was a 2-man duel on the way up. This is the most anticipated moment of the whole classic season.
The Swiss fans out in force here to try and bay Fabian Cancellara up the Paterberg.
Sagan is having to get out of the saddle to keep going here. Jürgen Roelandts is beginning to suffer. He's going to lose the wheel. Cancellara is giving it everything. He knows he's got to kill off the Slovaks. He's doing it. Cancellara goes over the top. Now he's going to get into time trial mode.
And Cancellara has made a difference there. Sagan's going backwards and Cancellara pulls away.
After 6 hours, 5 minutes, Cancellara wins the Tour of Flanders for yet another time.
With an incredible display of power, Cancellara secured another title in Flanders. But despite his defeat, Sagan continued to grow in popularity thanks to his ability to capture attention, whether he's crossing the line on his back wheel, signing autographs, or causing a stir with his theatrical antics away from racing. Peter was a media favorite. Eventually, with more exposure, endorsement deals came flooding in.
Life was like a box of chocolate.
This, coupled with his success on the road, transformed him into a cycling superstar. For a 23-year-old cyclist, the level of fame he had reached was unheard of in the sport, and so far, it felt like he had everything going for him. Judging by his performances in 2013 and the experience he gained, his fans were confident that he was going to prevail in the rematch against Cancellara at the 2014 Tour of Flanders. Expectations were high. But to everybody's surprise, when the Swiss made his move on the second-last climb, Sagan couldn't follow.
And here is the push, and he's decided to light up. The afterburners are on, and I think he's done for Sagan.
Unlike in 2013 when he went toe-to-toe with Cancellara until the last climb, Peter was no match for his rival this time. He was lacking the punch when he needed it most, which left a big question mark on his form and his effort management throughout the race.
300 metres and still nobody reaches out. This is absolutely remarkable. Van Avermaet, he doesn't want to give his wheel to Cancellara, and Cancellara goes for it. He's been there before. Van Avermaet goes for it for BMC. Cancellara comes through, and it's going to be Fabian Cancellara. Oh, one of the greatest wins of his career.
Things started going downhill for Peter, and his confidence was dwindling. Far fewer people were impressed with his green jersey after he failed to get a stage win at the Tour de France. He stopped bringing in results for the team after July, and by the end of the season, he left Cannondale for a big contract with the Tinkoff team. He didn't expect what was about to come when he signed that contract. 2015 is a year he will remember forever. Right off the bat, the team owner and sponsor, Oleg Tinkoff, started putting Sagan under pressure. The Russian billionaire told the press that he expects his star to get 3 major wins at the Classics in 2015, and anything less than that would upset him. But sports history has taught us that putting immense pressure on a young man who is trying to regain confidence can only lead to heartbreak. Tinkoff's statements seem to have affected Sagan's decision-making. He tried to do so much, only to end up burning all his matches and making costly tactical errors. The result was another disappointment at the Spring Classics. His critics didn't hold back their criticism, describing him as overrated and naive when it comes to racing tactics. He set about proving them wrong and eventually found success at the Tour of California and in Switzerland. But it wasn't enough to satisfy the Russian billionaire.
You've said, I'd pay this guy a lot of money. We've heard reports, $4.5 million. He's not performing.
Of course, I criticize him, which I believe I have a right to do. So when you have a contract with the guy, what else can you do? You can only criticize him because you cannot fire him. It would have been at my Tinkoff bank. I would probably give him a notice and I would just pay him 2 months of the salary and say him bye-bye.
Coming into the Tour de France, Sagan went an extra mile and lost weight in order to improve his climbing. He planned on targeting a wider range of stages, the flat ones as well as the hilly ones, in addition to helping his team leader in the high mountains.
His role is very clear, to help Alberto Contador to win the yellow jersey.
With his formidable form, he went all out and played every card in his quest for that one stage win. The results were remarkable. In 21 stages, he was second on 5 occasions and finished in the top 10 in 12 stages. But other than the green jersey, all his efforts amounted to nothing after failing to achieve his main goal. Despite the burnout, he headed to the Tour of Spain looking to salvage his dismal season. And on stage 3, he out-sprinted everybody to finally claim his first Grand Tour stage win in over 2 years.
Is it going to be a big one for Sagan? Oh, I think Sagan's got it!
But the joy quickly turned into sorrow when this happened later in the week. This was the last straw. He is physically and mentally exhausted. The burnout was unbearable. The end of the season is approaching, his boss is on his case, and most of the big races are over. We later found out that he was seriously considering retiring at this point. The man that people thought was destined to reign over bike racing for many years is now about to quit the sport at the age of 25. But before making a rushed decision, he took a month out to recover from the crash, a break he didn't know he needed as it improved his mental health significantly. In that period, he started preparing for one of the most important races in the cycling calendar. At the end of every season, the world's top cyclists compete in a one-day race for the World Championship's title. The winner is crowned world champion and gets to wear a special jersey for a whole year. In his previous 5 attempts, Peter had only finished once inside the top 10. This time there is a glimmer of hope because the race circuit in Richmond seems to suit him. Following a thorough study of the course, he planned on putting all his efforts into one single move. It's maybe easier said than done, but in cycling, it sometimes takes only one attack to change a cyclist's life.
Peter Sagan, we've not seen him all day and he's made the move.
This is it, there's no looking around, there's no sitting up and waiting. He has to go for home.
He's got as he goes into shock on bottom. Sagan leans a bike over, right on the limit right now.
Can Peter Sagan become world champion?
Yes, he can.
1.1 kilometres to go. This is where it starts to kick up.
He's now going to set himself up for the most important climb of his life. Peter Sagan with 1 kilometre to go.
Greg van Avermaet leads the chase. There are still plenty of others fighting hard for this gold medal. What has Sagan got left in the tank as he comes to
Peter Sagan puts it in the biggest gear on his bike. He's going to turn the left-hand corner. Look at the shoulders, look at the gritted teeth. Is he going to win this world title?
He's had some big moments in his career. This is set to be the biggest.
I think he's done the job. He's done enough. He will have time to celebrate, and this will be a very popular victory in the world of cycling. Peter Sagan from Slovakia is a world champion.
At last, Peter Sagan claims the first major title of his career. It provided great relief after such a brutal year. But he was just getting started. This was the beginning of the Peter Sagan era. Now that he's back to winning ways, it's time to take on Spartacus.
The 14th Sunday of the year, and it's that time again. At the start of today, Market Square in Bruges was packed with fans. This is the 100th Ronde van Vlaanderen.
Cancellara announced earlier that season that he will be retiring at the end of the year, making this his last participation in Flanders and Sagan's last opportunity to get his redemption. The world champion came into the race with a different approach. He planned on attacking from afar instead of reacting to Cancellara's moves. The Swiss usually makes his move on the penultimate climb in this race. Peter's attack should come long before that point.
And Sagan is onto a move here by Kwiatkowski. That surprised everybody.
The attack came 32 kilometers from the finish. Both Sagan and Kwiatkowski rode away from the favourites group on their way to rejoin the breakaway. Cancellara hesitated and didn't follow, thinking that the race would eventually come together on the last couple of climbs. But it wasn't long before Sagan reached the front of the race, immediately taking on the pacemaking and putting the hammer down to extend the gap with his rival.
Sagan driving them on, 29 seconds of a gap.
This is when the Swiss realized his mistake.
Fighting for the crown and the best space
who's
on the
coming
pole.
up the road here.
And here is Fabian Cancellara on the attack. Cancellara is almost closing them down himself. It's a stinging attack.
Remarkably, Spartacus overtook dozens of riders all on his own, reducing the half-a-minute gap into 6 seconds, until he had Peter Sagan within sight at the foot of the Paterberg.
Sagan, the world champion, and the retiring Fabian Cancellara chasing him.
Knowing this, the world champion launched one final attack to finish off the race.
Sagan sails alongside as if to prove that he's still got what it takes, and he's delivering the power. He stays seated and meted, and look at this. He is absolutely ripping up this climb.
And Peter Sagan is finding energy from deep, deep down underneath that World Championship jersey. Sagan over the Paterberg. Attempts at doing this, and finally Sagan is there. Peter Sagan makes it a fairy tale edition of the Ronde van Vlaanderen, and after 6 hours, 10 minutes, that is quite a show for the greatest showman that cycling has in the modern era.
That victory in Flanders wasn't his only highlight that year. His full potential was unleashed, becoming a force to be reckoned with in the pro peloton.
Peter Sagan has got it! You do not win a World Championships by mistake.
In the Tour de France, he managed to replicate his 2012 success with 3 stage wins and the green jersey for a 5th consecutive time. His presence overshadowed everybody else at the event.
Everybody else is having their fun, but it's not going to be them. Sagan at the line! Oh my goodness, what a sprint!
The year 2016 was unreal for Sagan and his fans. But despite all his success, he wasn't considered a top favourite to win the World Championships in Qatar. On paper, his odds were low compared to the pure sprinters because of the flat profile of the race. Most of the big teams planned on keeping the breakaway at a manageable distance, staying in a safe position, and working on the sprint at the end. However, at 178 kilometers to go, the unthinkable happened. Team Belgium and Team Britain took advantage of a 2-kilometer section in the middle of the desert and used the crosswinds in their favour.
This echelon is forming quite quickly. We'll see whether the tail of the peloton splits here, Rob, but the peloton are now doing 72k an hour.
The rest of the field were in complete shock at this surprise attack. Peter Sagan was among the 73% of riders that were ditched, but he miraculously bridged the gap to the echelon at the last possible moment. For the rest of the field, it was game over. These two teams did the lion's share of the work, but at the end of the day, one man, a third party, took all the glory.
They go for it, they're spread wide across the road, tied on the inside, it's Nizzolo on the barriers. Peter Sagan just showing himself, he's found space where none seemed to exist. Boutasmit is there, oh my goodness, he's gone and done it again. Oh, what about that? There is only one Peter Sagan. Sagan the Great, Peter the Great.
Peter the Great was his latest nickname, but there were still people doubting his greatness.
Peter Sagan spots the danger. No one surely is going to stop.
He needed to pull off something extraordinary to cement his name among the greats.
It is the world champion.
The opportunity came at the 2017 World Championships. In all of cycling history, only 5 riders have had the opportunity to win 3 consecutive world titles. All 5 have failed. Peter the Great showed up on race day. He single-handedly kept the race under his control by bringing back attackers twice during the final lap. He wanted to redirect this race towards a sprint, and he did.
He's got himself in a great position here. Matthews is up there as well. Stiebar in the Czech Republic. Ben Swift is on the left-hand side of the road in your picture. Swift is sprinting for the world title. It's Alexander Kristoff who's going for it now. And through the middle of the road, this is going to be such an incredible finish as they cross the line neck and neck. Sagan was Cancellara to win the world title 3 times in a row.
With 3 back-to-back world titles and 7 Tour de France green jerseys, it would be hard for anyone to break such records. Peter Sagan will go down in history as the first rider to have ever achieved such greatness.